Welcome back to Revisits in Final Fantasy X. We find our party continuing Yuna's pilgrimage, heading through the Scottish Highlands as we slowly approach the end of our journey. Actually, we're in the Comlands, a giant open field where summoners used to duke it out with Sin. While resting at a pit stop, we're approached by a guy named Father Zook. Apparently Zook was once a summoner that Lulu and Wakka guarded not too long ago. Odd that the game is bringing up character backstory this late, but whatever. We also learned that Lulu guarded another summoner before that, but it didn't end well. In fact, if you want to learn more about that, you can partake in a side quest right here before leaving the Comlands. Again, I find this a bit odd that the game is withholding backstory for Lulu at this point. I feel like this is something that should have been addressed way earlier, but it's barely been hinted at that Lulu was even a guardian before guarding Yuna. Again, weird timing. Regardless, Zook tells us that we've been labeled as traitors of Yevon, and that apparently we're the ones that murdered Keenock. Zook's a pretty smart guy, so we can clearly tell that's not the case, so he lets us go, only warning us that we should avoid temples in the future, which should be easy as there are none past the Comlands. Also, I should mention that since we've escaped Bevelle, people keep talking about how the temples have been experiencing riots, and I'm not sure why. Sure, the party has discovered the true face of Yevon, but these events have been largely low-key, not really heavily advertised. Why are the other followers of Yevon rioting? I mean, sure, Yevon's been spreading rumors that the party's gone all traitors, but the people of Spira care that much about us? I doubt it. Meanwhile, Titus is talking to Riku about what they're going to do to save Yuna from Sin.
We'll save Yuna even if she calls the final Aeon.
But how?
I'll think of a way. Let's think together.
Okay.
And if we can't think of something, we find another way.
Okay.
What does that even mean? Thinking of something and finding another way are the two ways of saying the same thing. Anyway, we make our way through the Comlands only to find some of Seymour's boys waiting for us with a giant robot thing. Apparently Seymour wants a chat, but our party tells him to screw off and we break their toy robot. Moving forward, we reach Mount Gagazet, which is the Ronso homeland, but before we can reach the actual mountain, we're stopped by Master Kelk and the other Ronsos. Kelk thinks we're traitors too, so he's not letting us pass. Yuna tells him that she's not following Yevon any longer, and when that fails, Auron and Lulu point out that Kelk is a hypocrite since he's left Yevon now as a maester and is protecting Gagazet as a Ronso, much like how Yuna is just trying to finish her pilgrimage for Spira, not for Yevon. And then Yuna gives probably the best response she could give in this situation.
I fight for Spira. The people long for the calm. I can give it to them. It's all I can give.
Now don't you look like a Ronso's ass, Kelk. Well anyway, after that, Kelk Ronso's up and lets us pass, but before we can reach the rest of the mountain, we're stopped by Biran and Yenke. Who are these two? Oh, these are the two Wookiees that Kimahri was fighting with in Luca way back when. And then we met them on the road before we hit the Moonflow, but that's it. I didn't leave anything out here. Those are the only two times we ever meet them. Anyway, the game feels like it's time for us to confront these two, despite how little screen time they've had. Also, I forgot to mention that Biran and Yenkin are responsible for breaking Kimahri's Hong long ago. I didn't really forget to mention this earlier, just the game literally tells you seconds before this fight when you talk to this Ronso standing by Kelk. Again, terrible timing to start explaining your party members, isn't it? Well, Kimahri has to fight Brian and Yentl here by himself, which can be an issue if you never leveled him up. I hadn't really in this playthrough very much, but it was pretty easy. Just lance it on one of them and you steal their moves, you get put in overdrive each time you do that, and you can easily take them out. After this, they gain respect for Kimahri and finally let us pass. But again, before we can reach the first screen of Gagazet, oh, for the love of God, I just want to start climbing this mountain already. I spent 20 minutes in cutscenes here and fights. Give me a break. What do you people want? Great. Is that it? Can I move on now? Finally. So we finally start heading up Mount Gagazet, which for some reason has the worst encounter rate in the whole game. Seriously, I take like 2 steps here and I hit a fight. Our climb up the mountain is pretty uneventful until about the halfway marker where Seymour shows up again. He faces Titus alone, and somehow he's now totally aware of the fact that Titus is Jet's son, as he refers to him as such.
Ah, the son of Jet. Now is your time to die. Prepare yourself, son of Jet.
Also, he seems to know that Jet is Sin.
Once I have become the next sin, your father will be freed again.
How does he know these things all of a sudden? Flip a coin. I don't know anymore. Seymour also reveals that he murdered all of the Ronsos that we left at the base of the mountain, so Kimahri is now the last Ronso. I'm not sure that's true. First off, there was only like 12 Ronsos there, and what if some of the Ronsos don't live on Gagazet? Hell, we established earlier that there's an entire Blitzball team of Ronsos currently on tour playing Blitzball, so I'm sure Seymour didn't kill them. So yeah, maybe Kimahri's like the 8th or 9th Ronso left in existence, clearly not the last. Seymour goes on and on about how we should help him since death is the answer to everything and will solve all of our problems, blah 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 blah. When we refuse, he turns into another weird statue thing and we kick his ass for the 3rd straight time. After dealing with Seymour, the party starts to wonder why Seymour was talking about Jet and how if he was Sin, Jet would be free. Titus drops the bomb to the rest of the party, the truth about his father, but they don't seem to be too shocked, just mostly confused as to how Titus was so chill with the idea of killing his father.
You'd fight your own father?
Yeah, no problem there.
Further up the mountain, the party encounters a pretty weird sight. There's a ton of fate lodged into the summit of Gagazet summoning something. Titus touches one of them and wakes up in the Zanarkand from the start of the game. Here he encounters one of the Fate, who he saw briefly at the start of the game, and then again at the cloister in Bavel. And if there already wasn't enough pointless plot twist going on in this game, the writers decided that they couldn't just have Titus be a person who was transported through time from his home. Oh no, they just had to make it more needlessly complicated. The Fate explains that Titus's home, and everyone he knows, is a dream, and therefore, by extension, so is he.
Yes, you're a dream of the faith. You, your father, your mother, everyone. All dreams.
Naturally, Titus is confused, and so the Fate Kid explains a bit. And by a bit more, I mean explaining by being as cryptic as all hell. Years ago, there was a war between Zanarkand and Bavel. Zanarkand used summoners to fight, while Bavel used Machina. For whatever reason, Zanarkand lost. Apparently, fire demons and ice goddesses are worthless when pistols are involved. And after losing, the remaining people and summoners in Zanarkand were all turned into Faith and were used to summon a dream version of Zanarkand before the war. Now, there's more to this story that the Fate didn't bother to explain, but I'll fill you guys on that in a little bit. Before Titus wakes up, the Fate reveals that should he and the party succeed in finding a way to kill Sin off permanently, the Fate will wake up and stop dreaming of Dream Zanarkand, therefore killing everyone who was part of that dream state, including Titus. Titus makes no attempt to tell the rest of the party what he just witnessed, since good lord knows how he would explain it, and we continue up into a cave. Nothing worth of interest here, we get to battle Smog 2.0, and that's about it. Finally though, we have reached Zanarkand, and for whatever reason, the game decides to play out the opening again. The whole opening again. So apparently Titus was retelling the entire game story in flashback to people that already experienced everything in the story.
Hey, there was more, right? I mean, like that time. Anyone?
I always thought Titus was talking to the player. I don't really understand why he's talking to the party members. So we make our way through Zanarkand, arriving in the ruins of the Blitzball Stadium, in which some interesting things happen. The stadium houses the memory of all those who passed through it, and as we walk around we see other summoners and their guardians, Braska, Jet, and Orn included. However, we then see a young Seymour and his mother. The mother is telling Seymour to use her to gain the final Aeon, but Seymour cries about not wanting to lose her. Now, this is all you get regarding Seymour's sad, soppy backstory unless you attempt to gain one of the extra Aeons. Later in the game, when you have access to the airship, you can find coordinates on the map that lead to Baja Temple. This is actually the area where Titus first met Riku at the start of the game. Here, you can get the Anima summon from the fate of Seymour's mother, who explains more about her lovely devil spawn. However, since all of this is optional and not exactly something you can easily come across, seriously, I'm not even sure where you can find the coordinates to this place in-game. I always just mash buttons on the world map thing and I just randomly find it. But I guess you want me to tell you the tragedy that befell our Viagra-colored hair antagonist. Alright, fine, sit down and I'll tell you the story. So it turns out that Seymour's mother was human and his father was Guado. This we actually did know from a couple of characters that mentioned it earlier. And Jiskel hoped that Seymour's could unite the two races, only to have that plan blow up spectacularly in his face when it turned out that Seymour's birth only made humans and Guado hate each other even more. I guess the divide between Humo and Guado were many years before this game occurred, since I don't pick up on any of that hostility anywhere in the game. So Jiskel, being the greatest husband in the known universe, took his wife and son and left them on Baja Island to live in exile. Although I'm not entirely sure if the island always looked like this, or if it fell into ruin, or it's just been years since anyone's been there. I don't know, but Jesus Christ, no wonder why Seymour murdered his father. This is right up there with Heihachi from Tekken throwing his son off a freaking cliff. How do you leave your son and your wife on this deserted island? But again, was it really deserted? The game's not really cluing me into that. Now, at some point during the exile, Seymour and his mother went to Zanarkand to have Seymour use his mother, who was dying at this point, to gain the final Aeon to become Sin. His mother thought that if Seymour used her to defeat Sin, the people would accept him. Anyway, Seymour failed despite his mother giving her life to become a Fate, and he returned to Baja to live alone in exile. And oh, and did I forget to mention he was 10 at the time? When he was 18, his father called him back home to help him with his work as a maester, which must have been the most awkward conversation ever.
Oh, Seymour? Hi. I know I left you and your dying mother on an island by yourselves for almost the better part of 2 decades, but I am just swamped with paperwork. I mean, there is so much red tape to get through. Janice in accounting just doesn't give any craps about what's going on, and it's a literal shit show down here. I could just really use an extra pair of hands.
Now, this backstory sounds interesting. I mean, it kind of explains why Seymour wants to destroy Sphera. The kid was left in exile since the people of Sphera rejected him for being half human and Guado, but Seymour wants to destroy Sphera to save the people of Sphera from death, or is he just saying that to justify his darker intentions? Regardless, none of this backstory is in the game. Yeah, you visit Seymour's mother in Baja, but she talks about how Seymour wanted her Aeon, but rejected it, saying it wasn't powerful enough, and that Seymour was secretly a power-hungry little bastard from the start. Most of what I just explained was in the Final Fantasy X Ultimania Guide, a book that was only released in Japan and has never been released in English, so which one is right? You know what? Screw both explanations. The mother's explanation is part of an optional side quest that's not easily accessible, and the book's explanation is in a book. So screw it. I don't care. It already makes the confusing already more confusing. We're skipping it and moving on. So where were we? Oh yeah, on the way to get the final Aeon. But before we can get to it, we have to take part in the most asinine cloister challenge in the entire game. Up to now, we've had to deal with the spheres and the glyphs, the ball swapping, and the weird timing-like mechanic that we had to deal with back in Bevel, but now the game changes up the entire way these cloister things work. You now have to activate a picture on the wall showing random Tetris pieces, and then proceed to the next room to light up the pieces using random switches. And this is all random trial and error. There is no way to determine which pieces will light up, so you have to try over and over and over and over again. And if you light up one of the wrong pieces in the sequence, you gotta start the whole sequence over again. Let me tell you something, game. Go f*** yourself. The cloisters were bad enough, we can agree on that. Yeah, not god-awful, just boring and slow. Here it's just insulting. The design was clearly changed at the last second here to pad out the area a little bit more. And for what reason? There's plenty more to do. Game's not exactly over here. I mean, technically we think it might be if you thought that Zanarkand was the final stop on the tour here, but it's not. Clearly a couple more hours left. Why are we padding it out? Well, after dealing with the Tetris board from hell, we fight Smog 3.0 and reach the chamber of the final Aeon, which, surprise, surprise, it's gone.
That statue lost its power as a faith long ago. It is Lord Zaon, the first faith of the final summoning. What you see before you is all that remains of him. Lord Zaon is... his soul is gone.
Gone? You mean there is no final Aeon?
It's like when you're that 101st person in line and the special for the top 100 people get something and then you arrive and you're screwed out of it. That's what this is like, isn't it? But it turns out that his unsent wife, Lady Unaleska, can help us. So we go to meet Unaleska, who... Whoa, I think she just broke my counter for most bizarre outfit in the game. Seriously, this makes what Donna looks like something that the Amish would find conservative. Unaleska explains that one of the party will need to be sacrificed to become the final Aeon, and then the final Aeon can be summoned to kill Sin and Yuna. The party is kind of surprised at this, which I don't understand. The process of sacrificing the summoner to Sin seems to be common knowledge in Sphera, yet why don't more people know about the fact that a Guardian has to be sacrificed as well? Seriously, no other Guardian in the past came back from Zanarkand and was like, Guys, did you know that in Zanarkand there is an undead chick wearing no clothes that kills a summoner's Guardian to even get the final Aeon? Again, Titus has issues with all this since he doesn't want Yuna to die, as he's probably got a suspicious theory that the party's going to want to use him as that sacrifice. Naturally, he starts whining like a baby.
That still won't change anything, you know? You bring the calm, and then what? That won't break the cycle!
Listen, You want to defeat sin and keep Yuna alive. You don't want sin to come back, yeah? That is just not gonna happen, brother, you know?
If you want everything, you'll end up with nothing.
But I want everything!
Now you're being childish.
Titus comes to the realization that Yunalesca might know something else about sin and maybe another way to stop it. So the party confronts her at the end of the universe? Yeah, I don't know anymore. Yuna asks the most basic question of even if she uses the final Aeon, would sin return? And of course, Yunalesca explains this.
Sin is eternal. Every Aeon that defeats it becomes sin in its place. And thus is sin reborn.
So that's why Jack became Sin.
Sin is an inevitable part of Spira's destiny. It is never-ending.
For some reason, Lulu and Waka stop her saying this, saying that it couldn't possibly be true that no way could be found to stop sin, because clearly Levin's teachings say that if humanity atones for its sins, sin will go away. Seriously, have you two not been paying attention for the past 2 hours of gameplay? The religion of Yevon is complete bullshit. The party states that they will no longer send any more people to their deaths at the hands of Sin or Yunalesca.
But no more. The final summoning is a false tradition that should be thrown away.
Well, Yunalesca doesn't quite agree, because just like Seymour, she too believes that death is the eternal answer to humanity's suffering, so yeah, this bitch can suck my longsword. So we get into a fight which is actually pretty challenging. This fight's all about status effects and trying to fight around them, but it never feels cheap and it makes the fight feel really tense. Also, this is a 3-stage fight. First you fight Yunalesca, then she turns into a... well, the less said about that second form the better, and then the third form she summons freaking Medusa from Castlevania. Well, after all that, Yunalesca fades, but not before mentioning a guy named Yu Yevon. Who's Yu Yevon? Well, we'll get to that in a little bit, guys. It's going to be so much fun. The party now realizes that killing Yunalesca means there's no longer a definite way of dealing with sin. They go to leave before Orin pulls Titus aside.
There's something you should know.
I know. It's about you, right?
I am also an unsent. You are not surprised.
I think I kinda knew. It was Yunalesca, wasn't it?
No, Orin, come on, don't be a part of the inconsistencies. You're too badass for that. Yep, Orin's been dead a while, since it turns out that after Braska and Jet gave their lives, he went to fight Yunalesca by himself only to get his ass handed to him. And the usual questions arise, such as how is Orin not turning into a monster, or why was he able to be present when Yuna did the sending at the Doge shore? Again, letting it go, otherwise my head will explode. Anyway, we leave Zanarkand to find Sid is back with the airship. We get on board trying to figure out what the hell we're going to do now, since if we don't find a way with dealing with sin, all that death for all eternity is kind of going to be on us. Kamari suggests that we talk to Micah, while Lulu thinks that the Hymn of the Fate might calm Sin. Since Jet liked the hymn, Sin might become docile when hearing it. So we go to see Micah first, because that's where the game wants me to go. But before we do that, the guards stop us as Micah labeled us traitors, when this chick comes out and says that we're okay and that the Al Bhed were spreading the rumors that we were the traitors.
She's no traitor. That is an evil rumor spread by the Al Bhed. What?
Yeah, as it turns out, Micah thinks he needs Yuna to stop Sin, and he believes she's his only hope. Why? Why her? Can't Micah just wait for another summoner to kill Sin? I don't understand. Why's it gotta be Yuna? Is she like the chosen one? Anyway, Micah acts as if we saw Yunalesca, and then some, and if we got the final Aeon, though he kinda loses his shit here when we tell him that we killed her.
You have profaned and subverted a 1,000-year-old tradition. Fools! Infants! Do you realize what you've done? You've taken away the only means of calming sin.
Micah starts spewing the same stuff that Yunalesca and Seymour said about how sin is eternal and there's no way to kill it permanently. Just calm it down since Yu Yevon will just intervene. So who is Yu Yevon? Well, Micah just says here that he crafts the souls of the dead into armor, and that armor is called sin. Again, he tells us, and yet I still feel confused. Well, Micah doesn't feel like watching Sphere burn to the ground, so he does this.
And the only thing that could have pierced that armor, you have destroyed. Nothing can stop it now.
Did Micah just send himself? Can he do that? How can he do that? Again, I love how this game just keeps rolling along and makes less and less sense as it does. So with Micah gone, we head off to the Faith Chamber where the kid from Titus's dream back on Gagazet asks us if we know how to defeat sin. Yeah, figures that the little kid would ask us a stupid question like that. Just tell us what to do. So we claim that killing you, Yevon, will probably do something, and the Faith agrees. It's kind of like that when that guy in your office tells you, oh yeah, I know how to kill sin, but just to be sure that we're on the same page, why don't you tell me how to kill him first? So the kid explains that Yu Yevon was a summoner, and now he just lives to summon. Again, not a real answer, but screw it, I'm going to explain everything right now that's going on with Yu Yevon, Dream Zanarkand, and Sid. This is something that the game should be explaining, but it never does. Oh, and fair warning, what I'm about to explain is nowhere in this game. It came from that Final Fantasy Ultimania guidebook, so again, I'm not counting it towards helping it out, and just keeping it in mind that this thing was in a book that was in Japanese, and that no one in America can read unless someone translates it. Okay, here we go. So remember that war between Zanarkand and Bevelle that they keep bitching about all game? Well, the Fate forgot to mention that Yu Yevon was the leader of Zanarkand and a powerful summoner. It turns out that Yu Yevon was the guy that made his people into Fate and made them summon the Dream Zanarkand. After doing this, Yu Yevon created Sin as an armor to protect him and his people while he focuses on summoning the Dream Zanarkand along with those Fate. He then had Sin destroy the real Zanarkand to make Bevelle shit their pants and never want to use Machina again. For whatever reason, the religion of Yevon was based around Yu Yevon, with the people not realizing that he was the cause for Sin in the first place. Now, before Yu Yevon created Sin, turns out he told his daughter the only trick of calming the creature by means of the final Aeon. And who was Yu Yevon's daughter? Anyone want to take a guess? Anyone? Just guess. I'm gonna stop talking for 2 seconds. I'm gonna let you guess. Okay, answer submitted. Okay. Ready? I hope your cards are flipped over because it's f***ing Yunalesca. Yep, Yunalesca is Yu Yevon's daughter, and the game never explains this. I didn't even know this until I researched this little story fact. I've been playing Final Fantasy X for the better part of 2 decades, it feels like, and I never knew this. How? How did I never know this? Almost 20 years with this game, and I never knew this until now. This is embarrassing. So yeah, none of this is explained anywhere in the game. You think it would be important as hell to explain all this. Heck, Yunalesca doesn't even address Yu Yevon as her father. When we saw her, she just mentioned him as Yu Yevon. Not like, my father will revive Sin. Nope, just called him by name. Guess they're on a bit of a weird speaking term thing where they can't address each other as father and daughter. This worked a lot better in Final Fantasy IX. A lot of people complain that Final Fantasy IX's final villain, the weird Necrocron guy, I don't know if that's how you say his name, I forgot, but this guy I'm showing you a picture of came out of nowhere. He's never mentioned, he's not referenced anywhere, he's never hinted at, but there's enough hints while you fight him and the context of what's been happening in the endgame that makes the player come to their own conclusions, and that's good. That's interesting character development because you're letting the person playing your game come to their own conclusion. That's good storytelling in some way because you are trying to give a little bit more freedom to your player to come up with a theory rather than having it be spelled out for you in like monologuing or in exposition dumps. I mean, that's okay. This is just like, nope, we don't feel like explaining it. Buy our Japanese manual book and have a guy translate it for you so you figure out what's going on. This is so stupid. Afterwards, the party decides that they're going to now use the Hymn of the Fate to calm Sin, so they tell all of Spirit to listen for the airship to play the song and then sing along while we prepare to take Sin head on. So now that our party thinks they have a plan to finally defeat Sin, will they succeed? Well, be sure to come back for the next time on the finale of revisiting Final Fantasy X. Thanks for watching.